Episode 60, Deus Ex Machina. This is Grizzly's Growls, the life and times of a minor local celebrity. It's about imagination, and it's about knowledge. It's about celebrating love and life, loyalty and liberty, and sometimes lunacy. And it's about 20 minutes, maybe a little more. So let's get started, shall we? Part 1. The Soul of a New Machine. Hello again. How you been? How's the family? You keep busy? Still seem pretty spry for someone of your advanced age. Sorry I missed you last week. I've been kind of busy. I got a brand new laptop computer. First brand new computer I've had since 1989. It's a Dell, and it got Vista on it, and it got 3 gig of RAM, and a 260 gig hard drive, and a big display, and all kind of other goodies on there. Pretty excited. My sister had been threatening to buy me a new laptop for the last 2 Christmases now, because my old one is very, very old indeed. She told me 2 years ago, just pick out what I thought was good, and she'd buy it within X amount of dollars. The trouble is, I really didn't know and don't know much about all the new stuff computers have, so I didn't know what to pick. And also, since my old laptop is very, very old, just about anything new would have been hugely better than what I had anyway. So too many things to choose from. And I've gotten a really bad impression on Vista from podcasts and whatnot, so I was hoping to get XP instead, which would mean a used but newer machine, most likely. Well, same thing happened this Christmas. Still no idea what to pick. Finally, Memorial Day weekend, I think it was Friday, we went up to Best Buy and looked at the black Toshiba they had on sale, and that seemed fine. Liked the color, and it had lots of big numbers in it, I guess. But they were out of stock of that particular one, so we didn't get a computer on Friday. And so on Memorial Day, she goes up to Best Buy on her own. I'm out of town at that point. She finds one with similar numbers and says, "Give me that one." And she buys it, and then she brings it to me and says to me, "Here's your new computer." And I said, "Thank you." And I started playing with the thing. I suspect you know why. Anyway, I didn't manage to get a show recorded last weekend. I've been busy doing the impossible. First off, it was impossible to get my new Vista machine to network with my old Win98 SE machines, where all my old data and software was living. So I started struggling with the flash drive version of a SneakerNet on that. Well, I got enough moved so I could do stuff again. Got Audacity up and running on the new machine, and dang, it's fast on this machine. Moved over the audio files I needed for the show, Firefox and my Firefox profile, and Pegasus for my email, and my Pegasus data for that. And then all of a sudden, for no apparent reason, the network started working. Imagine my chagrin. And I just recently gotten my old HP DeskJet 855C printer up and running again. Shared off my ancient desktop, even older than my old laptop. Well, Vista could see the printer on the network now, but it wouldn't let me use it. Turned out HP decided the 855C was just too old and they didn't need to support it on Vista. Well, after pretty significant digging around, I remember that HP drivers tend to be backward compatible, and I figured, well, maybe a newer driver would work instead. Well, that didn't work. And so I'm working my way through the drivers list in Vista, and what to my wondering eyes should appear but a Vista driver for the HP DeskJet 845C, seemingly an older printer than my 855C, but still with drivers in Vista. And it works mostly fine. Go figure. A couple of little boo-boos it gives me every now and again, but mostly it works. Anyway, it took me bits and pieces of all week to get the new laptop mostly working, and there's still stuff that doesn't want to work for no apparent reason. One game, I can't get Civ 2 to work, or Civilization 3, I should say. And once again, I do have a working computer to do my writing on. I can print out scripts to my heart's content now, and I can edit what seems to me to be blinding speed. This ought to be fun. So now, where's this woman I gotta wrestle? Part 2. Everybody knows that. You know, over the time I've been investigating this whole autism spectrum disorder stuff, I've come to understand just how difficult it can be for other folks to understand why we folks with Asperger's syndrome act the ways we do. One particular example is what's called theory of mind. Now, theory of mind is a bit easier to understand in lower functioning forms of autism, especially with younger kids. In fact, I heard on Leo Laporte's podcast, Jumping Monkeys. It's a new one they're doing about child raising and whatnot. I heard it the other day that most very young neurotypical, or NT, kids start out with a bit of theory of mind confusion in any case. So they start out thinking that if one person knows something, other people must know it too. They think their parents know what they know and understand what they're thinking and know what they've done. That's why they really don't understand the whole lying thing initially, and why they lie when, of course, why would they lie when mommy already knows everything? And then, of course, when they do lie, they don't understand the rules. They say they didn't do something. They obviously did do, not because they think mommy won't know, but because they know that she does know. She knows everything. So they deny they did it as a way of saying they don't want to be punished for doing it. Still a lie, but they're doing it wrong. Now, theory of mind refers to an inability to differentiate between what different people might be aware of. It implies an expectation, well, you might say mind reading, I guess you'd say. At the extreme, it's a belief that only oneself is real and everything and everyone else is just pictures. That's the most fundamental definition of autism itself, actually. Well, eventually, neurotypical kids learn the difference between them and everybody else, and between mommy and daddy, and between different people. Autistic kids, well, tend not to get that. Low-functioning autistics in particular may never make sense of the difference between what you know and what I know, and worst case may have a tough time understanding we're different people. Well, I found this isn't just about knowledge, but also about emotion. I tend to expect that other folks will know how I feel, how I am affected by what they do and say, right from the days I started getting bullied, which would be from the first day of kindergarten. I would assume that folks knew they were hurting my feelings. And some of them did, of course, and were intentionally making me uncomfortable and confused just because they thought my panic was fun to watch. Of course, these sick bastards are hopefully dead or in prison by now, so I can be noble and forgiving and whatnot at this point. Anyway, other kids who would hear me getting called a name, one that offended me, might not have known it was intended as anything but a nickname, or that particular treatment was treated as anything but just gentle kidding. They called me the name because everybody called me that name, and since I thought they all knew it was offensive, because they all knew what I was thinking, what I was feeling, they were therefore all bullies, to my mind, even the folks who thought they were being friendly. I did it for the folks who didn't call me names, folks who never did anything actively aggressive, still felt to me that everyone thought the same way, so to me they were all bullies and all not to be trusted. I did eventually learn, intellectually at least, that that wasn't the case. It only took me another 12 or 13 years or so to get that straight, of course. Now when I first read about theory of mind, I thought initially it didn't apply to me. People don't know what each other are thinking. People don't all think the same things. Everybody knows that. I'm not stupid. Of course I didn't believe such things. But upon further review, I find that my behavior is often driven by exactly that sort of feeling. Someone says or does something that offends me or confuses me or even frightens me, and I assume that they know exactly how I feel about it. So it must be intentional. Well, then I assume that others are also liable to be intentionally offensive or confusing or frightening. And the reverse also tends to be true. Being around folks who I find friendly and trustworthy causes me to trust folks I don't even know, and to expect the same sort of friendliness. Now, that sort of thing makes no sense to the neurotypical or NT friends of folks on the spectrum, especially for higher functioning autistics or Aspies like myself. I mean, one of the diagnostic criteria for Asperger's syndrome is normal to high intelligence. And I think high intelligence Aspies tend to stand out more, so folks think we're all very smart. Our NT friends wonder how an intelligent person could ever believe that folks all think and feel the same and know the same things. That just couldn't be what we think, and they're right. I don't believe that intellectually. But there is a part of my mind at a very basic medulla oblongata sort of level that believes that everyone knows the same things, thinks the same things, feels the same things, knows what I know and think and feel. And when I think it through, I don't believe it. But I have to consistently and constantly be thinking about it, as with so many aspects of ASD, or I think and respond to that basic assumption. Now, thinking things through consciously every moment is constant work and gets very tiring, and when I'm tired, I stop thinking. I stop wanting to think. And that's why sometimes when you come up to me out in public, I obviously don't want to talk. I'm too tired. And socializing is hard work for me, even though I'm fair to middling good at it when I'm not tired. Face-to-face is even harder. I don't know. I hope all that helps you understand where I'm coming from on some of this and why some evenings I'm not coming from anywhere. Part 3. That vision thing. You know, I've actually got 2 reviews today. I started out wanting to review Jack Palms 3, Seth Harwood's new podcast novel in that series. I gather Seth did very well indeed with the new hard copy, or Dead Tree edition, of Jack Wakes Up, the first book about Jack Palms, and congratulations to him. I did review This Is Life, the second book. I believe that was just last episode, in fact. Now, Jack Palms 3 was just completed, according to the podiobooks.com website. I did listen to all the episodes available when I started listening to it. The book is every bit as good as This Is Life. Every bit as good. It has the same characters, it has the same villains, the same crimes, the same dangers, more or less, some of the same settings. It is much, much, much more violent, and the language is just as rough as previous books. Maybe rougher, but I don't hardly think so. But the violence rose to such an extreme that I don't really care to listen to the rest of it, quite honestly. I mean, that's my taste. Maybe you won't mind. My one disappointment is that this book feels to me like part 2 of This Is Life, the second book, and not really a new novel. It's kind of like that stretch in the Sherlock Holmes stories where the author wrote story after story about Moriarty. Every time, something with Moriarty. Now, I would have liked to see Jack face some new enemies and some new challenges. But it's fine. I mean, if you like This Is Life, you will like Jack Palm's 3, I think. Well, whatever the actual title turns out to be. Now, I did want to recommend something completely different I finished listening to yesterday, titled Communion of the Saints by Alan David Justice. Now, the main character, and this is from audiobooks.com also, by the way, the main character is Cleo Griffin. She's a pragmatic and even rather cynical historian who's just lost in an untenured French professorship at an American university, and he lost it based on the whole publish in Paris thing. And she lost her father about the same time, who died pretty much from grief for her mother, who had just recently died in a mental institution. Not fun. Not a pretty sort of a year. So she's left all alone, jobless. Just in time, she's offered a job in this English town of St. Albans, named after the first Christian martyr of England. A local group there wants her to research and write articles to restore the fame of their saint, and indirectly of their town, calling themselves the Communion of the Saint, hence the title. An ideal opportunity it would be for her, and a simple task, it seems, well suited to Cleo's talents. But then the saint starts talking to her. Saint's been dead for about 1,700 years. Now he's talking to her and giving her visions. And, I mean, has she inherited her father's spirituality or her mother's schizophrenia? Now, I like this book a lot. I found it quite comforting to listen to this group of characters who could treat spiritual events, even miracles, as fairly matter-of-fact part of day-to-day life. There is some violence in the book, some racism, very little language, I think, and plenty to think about here. I mean, the reading is well done, if not flashy, and the music is a perfect choice, quite frankly. A couple of characters are mildly stereotypical, I suppose, but most are wonderfully deep, and some I'd very much like to meet, quite frankly, in real life, especially some of the stranger folks. The descriptions of the town, the buildings, and the history are quite evocative. In some ways, it reads like an historical novel, and it does a similar job of explaining the history while entertaining with a fairly dramatic story. I even recommended it to Mac and Catherine over at the Catholic in a Small Town podcast, which I listen to regularly. I'm not Catholic, but some of my favorite relatives are. Lovers of spirituality and history and England will all be quite pleased with this work, I think.
The Communion of the Saint by Alan David Justice. Cleo Griffin, an out-of-work academic with an attitude and a tendency towards sarcasm, travels to England to interview for a last-chance job as the pet historian for a group who hope to use her to build the reputation of the local saint, Alban. No sooner does she arrive than the dead saint starts talking to her, out loud. The voice is hard enough for Cleo to take. Her mother, in her final illness, had lost touch with reality, and Cleo fears the same fate. When the saint drags her unwilling into the past to live the lives of people long dead, Cleo fights to hold on to her reason. And when the past itself comes to life in Cleo's present, in the person of a medieval plague victim who appears in her living room, Cleo must choose between rationalism and compassion. Her decision lands her in a mental hospital, where she has to confront both the fear of losing her reason and the reality of her experiences. When Cleo gains her release from the psychiatric ward, her psychiatrist, like many others, asks her to pray for him. Other people, whom she doesn't even know, have been taking care of the cottage left her by a local mystic. When her employer is injured in an auto accident, Cleo's half-believed prayers seem to lead to a miraculous healing. The Communion of the Saint, the title is a paraphrase of a line from the Apostles' Creed, is a novel of past and present skepticism and belief. The story question, How does a modern, skeptical, rational person fit the irrational, the supernatural, into her life and still make some sense of it all? Not easily.
Part 4. Bear with me. I finally managed to post the 3 first official episodes of the now separate Stories feed that I'm calling Stories from the Hibernation, just because I felt so clever thinking of it. As it turned out, I'm starting with reading a very old book called The Biography of a Grizzly by Ernest Thompson Seton. It's going well, I think. I'm actually quite enjoying it. As it turns out, though, there's a blog that specifically for fans of Ernest Thompson Seton, and the blogger came across my mention of hibernation on my Changeling Turkey blog, and was kind enough to say good things about my reading so far, and linked back to Changeling Turkey, which in turn has a link back to hibernation, which isn't a separate website anyway. But it was a nice surprise. Somebody that knows the author, knows the stories, and thought I was doing a good job recording them. I feel pretty good about that. There are obvious downsides to having 3 blogs and 2 podcasts, though, as you can see. People can get lost in there. I don't quite know what to do about that in particular. Part 5. 60. Now, by the way, though this is episode 60, episode number 60, technically my 60th show was, well, either episode 59, since I didn't record episode 0, so it'd be 0 through 59, it'd be the 60th. But also, if you don't count episode 0, then actually my 60th episode was the first episode of Hibernation, which came after 59. But this one got the number 60, so yay me. Have a glass of champagne on me when you get a moment. If I can manage to keep struggling past my problems with executive dysfunction, I'll keep doing these and keep doing hibernation too, and just maybe someday finish that special podcast I intended to do for the local nonprofit. You know, sometimes it's just all too big, and there's just too much stuff to deal with all at once. But one thing at a time I should be able to struggle through. Now, next on my Doesn't Suck list is an acoustic indie rock tune called 3-to-1, ratio 3-to-1, from Jared J. Stulin out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. He characterizes himself as just a guy with a band who decided to try his hand at solo stuff. I can certainly identify with that. I thank you for your patience. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned. We'll have to get together and do this again sometime. Talk at you later. Thank you very much for listening to Grizzly's Growls, the life and times of a minor local celebrity. If you like the show, we'd like to hear from you. Create your own comment at the website hosted by Liberated Syndication at grizzly.libsyn.com. Participate with a call to our comment line at 206-202-1548 or an email to grizzliesgrowls@gmail.com or in our Facebook group. And motivate others to listen. If you like the show, tell your friends. If you don't like the show, tell your enemies. This program is sponsored by donations from people just like you. Donations, whether large or small, are appreciated through the donate buttons on the Grizzlies Growls websites or via the link in our show notes. Talk at you later. This show is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license.
starts with everything I knew before the falling star. I remember it all so well. I remember that day you fell. And start with everything I knew before the firestorm. I remember those days of dawn. I remember 3-1. Begin with everything I saw before the falling star. Gotta remember well, remember just how you felt. Let's begin with everything I saw before the firestorm. I can see that burning dawn, I can see it 3-1. And I know it's not unlikely we read it wrong, but it's dead and gone now. And I know it's not unlikely we read it wrong, but it's dead and gone now. Nothing more than terrified, my walls were coming down. I saw the cracks that spread, I saw the God was dead. There was nothing more than misery that kept me hanging round. That searing smoking gun, I lost it 3-1. And I know it's not unlikely we read it wrong, but it's dead and gone now. And I know it's not unlikely we read it wrong, but it's dead and gone now. Something's coming round again, and I know this time I'm gonna cave in. Something's coming round again, and I know this time I'm gonna give in. Let's start with everything I knew before the falling star. Gotta remember well, remember just how you felt. Let's start with everything I knew before the firestorm. I can see that burning dawn, I can see it 3-1. And I know it's not unlikely we read it wrong, but it's dead and gone now. And I know it's not unlikely we read it wrong, but it's dead and gone now. Something's coming round again, and I know this time I'm gonna cave in. Something's